Well, John, prosecutors are charging a well-known Atlanta attorney with involuntary manslaughter in the shooting death of his wife. Claude MacGyver was riding in the backseat of their SUV when he claims he accidentally shot and killed his wife, Diane, who was in the front seat. Mr. MacGyver says he pulled out the gun because they were driving through a dangerous area and he was concerned about carjackers. Court documents, though, show he owed his wife $350,000 at the time of her death. Let's bring in the legal panel on this. Richard St. Paul, former prosecutor, criminal defense attorney. Bob Bianchi, criminal defense attorney, former head county prosecutor and trial attorney also. Bob, let me start with you. So he's in the back seat, says he falls asleep, suddenly awakes, and accidentally pulls the trigger. Does this sound reasonable or a fake?
Well, Eric, what's very important from a criminal law standpoint is to make a distinction of what the homicide prosecutor is doing here. There is not an allegation that this was an intentional or purposeful murder. Rather, the prosecutor's theory of this case was that, in fact, it was an accident. And the issue that will be at play for an involuntary manslaughter charge is whether or not there was a substantial and unjustifiable risk of serious bodily injury or death. And I think the prosecutor's case will be based on the fact he had the gun out, his finger was on the trigger, it was pointed at or in the direction of a person, his wife, and this looks like a very solid case for the prosecution in terms of the facts and the law. But they are not alleging there's motive here through this money. If that were true, they'd be bringing murder charges. So,
Richard, it seems without a motive dealing with the money, the prosecutors have a different type of case.
Well, look, there's three things that take place for a crime, right, to find a conviction, typically that the prosecution wants to prove: means, motive, and opportunity. And he had all of them. I mean, certainly if you add in the fact this investigation is not over, so you could add in the fact that there is a motive, it was because of the money. You can also maybe later find out, I mean, this is kind of a made-for-TV thing, that the wife's friend who was driving the vehicle at the time, maybe she had something with the husband. So this case is far from over, and I think there will be more facts that come out and potentially different charges that may be charged as we learn of the new facts.
Yeah, Bob, if they had a connection with the money, you think they would have brought that charge? I mean, apparently he owed the money in December 14, and then they moved that loan to December 17, the end of this year. I mean, this happened this past September, so there doesn't seem to be a timeline that fits.
Eric, it would be the height of prosecutorial malpractice to wait 3 months to bring charges in the first place. And if you believe there was a motive or the possibility it's a homicide, I've done these investigations. Every case is a murder, an intentional murder, until you prove otherwise. They would not be able to go before a jury with a straight face and say, we originally charged involuntary manslaughter after 3 months of an investigation, but now want you to convict them of murder. In fact, I don't believe that evidence of the money owed will even be admitted in a trial for involuntary manslaughter. But I do agree with my colleague. If they develop evidence that shows that this was somehow to get rid of the debt, which is not really anything that's in this case based upon their relationship, their background, their finances, then they could always amend the charges. But prosecutors do not want to go in with one theory of a case and change it because it gives the defense to say, hey, these prosecutors don't know what they're doing.
And Richard, the prosecutors, are they going to be told, for example, it's kind of weird. 1990, he was indicted for firing a gun allegedly at 3 teenagers. So he's got or had something on the record about that. Does that interplay with this at all?
No, that will likely not come in. It does show that he has a propensity towards violence, but it is highly prejudicial. One, because he was only indicted in those charges, he was never convicted of anything, so it likely will never make its way in. But if I'm a prosecutor, I'm thinking to myself, this guy does have potentially a propensity for violence. The other thing is that we didn't mention is that the coroner, ruled this a homicide, and you looked at the forensic evidence. It shows that the bullet was done. The bullet went through the wife's body in a downward angle, and they never recovered the bullet. So I think there's a lot of facts here that we haven't got to yet in this case.
All right. Yeah, but Eric, we need to be careful. That is the definition. Homicide is the definition where they give in all cases in which there is a death that was not by natural causes or otherwise. The manner of death here, they're clearly saying was an accident in this case. And your question was very good. That previous incident probably would not be admitted in evidence. I agree, would be overly prejudicial unless the defense says that he did not know of the danger of the weapon, in which case they could say, well, this previous case shows you know how to use a weapon, what a weapon is, what happens when you fire a weapon. So the defense may very well open the door at some point to the admission of that 1990 event.
All right, Richard and Bob, we'll see what happens. The reports do say that Mr. MacGyver was distraught and grief-stricken over his wife's death. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Jenna?
Thank you, Aaron.